Christine Spraker.
And I'm Aki.
We're co-CEOs of EON. We're following up from our webinar that happened a couple weeks ago with Mark Cuban and 3 pulmonary doctors that we were very lucky to have as panel guests.
So it's not every day that you guys get to sit down with a tech tycoon and 3 of the best minds in pulmonary medicine. Aki, what was your favorite part of this experience?
Yeah, easy hands down. It was shaking Mark's hand and saying thank you. Back in 2014, was a practicing physician and trying to solve a clinical problem. Wanted to create an app or software to help that, and reached out to Mark every Saturday. It was just a habit where I would contact him via email, and one day he wrote back, and that started our journey. And only talked to him via either text or email over the past really 4 years. And there was an event in Denver where I thought that we were going to be able to meet him, say thank you, and shake his hand. Where it was a Denver Startup Week. He was the keynote speaker, got his front row seats, and then he just got shoveled off the stage really quick and never got to say thank you. So going down to Dallas 2 weeks ago, shaking his hand, saying thank you for the investment and all the advice and help was easily my favorite portion of that webinar.
Christine, the webinar addressed the failures of current healthcare technology, misaligned incentives, and innovative solutions. What do you think was the most valuable part of the discussion?
Oh, there were so many pieces of it. I think, for me, I thought that hearing the frustrations from the doctors was a very key piece of it. So many vendors have come in to hospital systems promising so much for so long, and the physicians, the hospitals, people are continually getting burned by purchasing something with an expectation that it was going to do something else, and then not having that clinical value that they expected. And so I think hearing that they're frustrated, but they want to be part of the solution, they want to be brought to the table, they want their feedback incorporated, was affirming for me, at least for what our strategy is and how we're developing EON Direct. And then also hearing Mark talk about how data is used in other sectors and how big it really can be, but yet we're just limited and just starting to hit the tip of the iceberg right now in healthcare.
Dr. Mazzone talked about this in the webinar. He mentions that technology solutions that are created without clinical input will fail them. Aki, how is EON integrating clinical knowledge and input into software?
EON at its foundation was created by a physician. Like I'm a practicing physician who's in the trenches, and when you're in the trenches, you understand the actual clinical problems, you understand the workflow problems, you understand the needs, and being able to translate the clinical problem to a software engineer or a developer or an architect to be able to get desired results is imperative. So Dr. Mazzone was spot on, and I think that engineers and companies, they work in this vacuum where they don't understand the true clinical problem, and sometimes what you end up creating is a solution that has no problem clinically, right? And so at EON, what we do is we are focused on a true clinical problem that's brought about by the end users, the providers, and then really focusing on translating that language to a software developer so that we can actually solve a true problem. And I think that's really a major differentiator about how we involve clinicians into our cycle for development.
EON is using data to drive results or to drive this software. Mark Cuban referred to data as the new oil in this industry, in every industry. What is EON doing to understand data that other companies aren't?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, everybody in our company anyways, we expect to be some type of expert when it comes to deep learning, AI, what is AI, what isn't AI. So at a high level, we understand, okay, when we're talking about data, what's its significance and what kind of role does it play in what we're doing. From there, we understand that data is going to drive the future of healthcare. And we also understand, though, that you can't just create something from a limited data set. That being able to create something that's clinically meaningful and is pragmatic to implement in a hospital requires millions of data that has been curated with an actual outcome, or a ground truth is what we call it. And Mark referenced it in the webinar. He said that's labeled. He said that, you know, there's going to be all these new positions in the future that their only job is to label data. There's a lot of data that's available publicly that you can get the data set from, and everybody's making the same models from the same data, but the ground truths aren't necessarily there, or the amount of data is not necessarily there that gets to a truly clinical, reliant product that you can use that's actually better than a human. Real quick, you know, there was a study that recently came out, published in a magazine, but put out by Google, that was saying lung cancer AI beat a radiologist. And when you start to dig into the actual study itself and the design and what they were comparing in the data sets, you realize that it really wasn't that clinically significant. However, the hype around AI and these big articles, our model beat lung cancer, beat a radiologist. There's a lot of hype around it, and so we're just trying not to.
That article was
overhype it.
interesting, actually. Let's talk about, we're talking about data as oil, right? So they have a limited data set. I don't know, and there was Google Kaggle 2 years ago, right? I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Kaggle, but it was $1 million, lung cancer challenge for data scientists. And they wanted to use computer vision. And computer vision is the hot dog, not hot dog from Silicon Valley, right? So, and lung cancer is this nodule a cancer or not a cancer? And so that data set was about 1,000 CT scans, but they weren't even labeled properly, right? And then
there weren't ground truths.
And in that article, I think they kind of misinformed that a different data set was actually used. But regardless, right, they're working on something that's called computer vision. However, I think the New York Times probably picked it up, and they called it, the CAD, like computer aided detection. So there's computer aided detection, there's segmentation, and then there's true computer vision. So when this very small, it's research, very small data set and very small kind of publication came out, a lot of the companies latched onto it as, kind of trying to state that what computer vision is very similar to what they're selling. But what they're selling is extremely limited and very different than what computer vision is. And they all put it under CAD Plus or CAD-X or, different type of CAD that really doesn't reflect what it is. So, just to kind of bring it all back together is Dr. Silvestri in this webinar, he goes, well, I'm a doctor, how do I know, or how can I understand the difference, or understand the data better, or data science better? And Mark said the coolest thing, man, tutorials. And I remember 4 or 5 years ago, that's how I learned about AWS and the infrastructure and how to set up the cloud, what the cloud was. And then in terms of data science, Coursera, taken Andrew Ng's course. Yep. We've both taken Andrew Ng's course from Stanford. Why can't every doctor take at least basic courses or tutorials to truly understand what the importance of data is, how to curate that data, how to really make it oil? Because right now it's not oil.
Well,
if that makes sense.
Take it a step further, even other industry leaders probably should be taking the course too, so that their marketing isn't saying, oh, we have AI and we're better than this, and oh, buy this, and then it's just another disappointment for a hospital when they buy a piece of software that promised them something that never truly fulfills that promise.
It's hard to get healthcare stakeholders to take a risk. Dr. Silvestri even said he has to beg for new technology. Some of the top hospitals in the country are working with EON. Aki, what value does EON bring that breaks through that barrier?
It's a different approach, right? I think that the market now is so dynamic. It's changing, daily. What technology can do is changing daily. Some companies, they're focused on one singular product, but it's really, we talk about it all the time, right? That there's 1,000 startups, and then there's these well-capitalized companies. Those 1,000 startups, each one of those companies is a feature or something that we offer as part of our holistic offering that gets to a desired result of clinical significance. So when I say it's our approach, it's integration, being masterful and being flexible in understanding that there's 500 different implementations of Epic and how we can translate that data into meaningful sets that can then be clinically used. It's rapidly having a modular and a rapidly expansive platform that can handle the appetite for the end users. The best, the toughest customers in the country are using little old Eon, right? And we ask our clients all the time, like, why is that, right? There's a reason that these clients, big and small, are choosing us, and to me, it's our approach.
You guys talked a little bit about never paying a physician for consulting. It doesn't seem like you guys need to do this because your customers seem to be spreading the word for you. Why else haven't you guys consulted with a physician on your software?
Well, we consult with physicians and end users all the time to improve the clinical workflow and enhancements and to always make the product and the application better. What we've never done, though, is pay a physician for those services. I've worked in healthcare for a long time on the industry side, and there's value that clinicians bring in helping maybe promote a product. They can talk about a product in a way different than maybe a marketer can, and physicians as peers are going to listen to what their peers are using. The problem happens when those providers or those physicians become biased, and are no longer unbiased and are promoting something just because financially they're being reimbursed, and it doesn't make sense for them to walk away from that side of it at that point, even if it's a product that they're not using. And so for us, we thought that the best way to maintain a physician relationship where they are unbiased is just not to compensate them. It's that simple.
Yeah, I think that we do pay a physician. I mean, I'm a physician and I work at Eon, right?
We pay you.
But so, it's managing conflict of interest is something that we just haven't figured out for physicians. But physicians deserve to get compensated for the services that they provide to industry. And we talked about it earlier. Dr. Mazzone talked about there has to be a clinical lead to develop the actual clinical solution. Well, how do you compensate that physician for their time without getting into the traps that Christine just spoke about? We haven't figured that out yet. And I don't think that, and for us, I think we're going to have to figure that out at some point. The industry, the market, physicians are going to have to figure that out. There just hasn't been a good solution yet.
Dr. Epen asked a similar question of how we participate with each other to build a system that provides justice. You've built Eon around improving patient care and saving lives. How does Eon define clinical value and clinical justice to provide this to your clients?
Clinical justice is truth and transparency that is used for the optimization of a patient's journey, whatever that may be. So in this example, our pilot really is lung, and in lung, if there is a lung nodule, that potentially could be cancer or it could be benign, and taking steps that are not appropriate at that time are not just. So how do we present the data in a manner to an end user, or the guidelines in a manner to where the optimal thing should happen for that patient? And if there's behaviors that are not optimal, you get insight into them. And surgeries, right, all the time. Like, how do we know that surgeries or medications that we give to patients actually help long term, right? We don't, because you would think that there's tracking. There's no tracking of anything. So to us, clinical justice is truly understanding what happened and presenting a pathway that is easy for the best thing for that patient to actually happen and occur.
If I can expand on that a little bit too, there are registries set up for many different societies and many different diseases, and somebody has to manually enter that information into the registry, and some of them can require as much as 130 different data elements just to enter in this requirement to participate in it. And so to have a quality standard across the board is very administrative heavy for hospitals or for providers, and that's just to be quote unquote, compliant or to meet a certain standard, but those standards don't actually show any true outcomes or give insight into what the behaviors really are. And so we're just really focused on the right patient, the right procedure at the right time. How do we give that transparency and that insight?
All right, guys, thank you for sitting down and answering some of these questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.